It's my DraftKings hockey picks for Tuesday, February 18th. We're starting right now. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Holkamaniacs YouTube channel. If this is your first time here and you want to become a profitable DraftKings player, start now by subscribing to the channel. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything along the way. And if you're already a Holkamaniac, you know exactly what time it is. Make sure and smash that like button, because I'm sure there are a group of people that are just here because of the NBA All-Star break. We definitely want you guys to join our community even after NBA gets rolling again. So if you want to join my weekly drawing for 20 DK bucks, let me know in the comments your favorite stack for tonight's slate. It is a tougher one, but there's a lot of awesome contests because of the NBA All-Star break that will be rolling out on DraftKings and FanDuel. DraftKings actually has 100K to first prize today on one of their contests, so it's going to be a fun slate. Let's dive into the game environment first. Welcome, Holkamaniacs. It is the NBA All-Star break, some of the best times of the entire year to be playing NHL DFS. So it was a lot of fun hanging out with the community in Discord yesterday going into that slate. Today we have some big prizes available on DraftKings. 100K to first on one of those contests that they have up there, and a couple other really large contests that we don't get every day. I know a lot of people out there, maybe you're here for the first time, maybe you've never played NHL DFS before. I've got a little bit for you guys. I also have a little bit for our loyal community that we haven't had yet. This is the data sheet that you're looking at here. I do make this available to all of my Twitch subscribers each and every day in the Discord. It's posted, but I will say that I did add a little bit of something for the guys that have been really supporting us over the last few months, going through this process of transferring from NFL to a little bit more of a hockey focus. And today we will go through each of the game environment situations for this slate, but I also added something that, again, bear with me a little bit. It's a little bit raw in terms of the displaying of it, but we have some power play and PK numbers here. And kind of the more I got into this slate, I did realize that it is a tough slate overall. So it's almost fitting that it's one of those ones where there's a lot of great contests available. There's going to be a lot of new people in here that don't really know what they're doing, but I will say that that could be a big edge for us if we really dive deeper. So I want to get even a little bit deeper into trying to find some really good stacking targets and good game environments today. So if it is your first time here, what we really focus on in the NFL streets is focusing on game environment, but also good spots where we can get a lot of shot attempts on both sides of the puck. So the first thing that I would say, if you are new to the community, jump in the Discord, actually go check out the video I made on how to read this sheet, and you'll get a better idea of some of the things we're walking through, but I'll try and touch on a little bit of everything as we go here. So the first thing that I always do is I'm just going to sort by game pace on this, and I do think that this is a slate overall where we don't have like an amazing situation where two bad defenses are playing against each other. One of the things that I noticed right away in terms of the Vegas totals was there's not a lot of teams at the top that we normally see with these massive totals. Only a few teams. I mean, there's 7 games on this slate. Only a few teams over 3.5 implied goals. That's really very low in comparison to even what we had last night and the night before. So it's an interesting one. We're going to have to dig a little bit deeper. Again, what you're seeing here in terms of the data sheet where there's just black boxes, that doesn't mean that it's blank. It just means that it's somewhere middle of the pack in terms of what the data point says relative to the tails. I always want to focus in terms of matchups, in terms of basically anything on the tails, the extremes. So I'm not using it in my analysis if it's in the beginning. So I don't want it being in color. I don't even want to even think about it. So let's walk through here, guys. I will say that the first thing that I want to talk about here is let's just talk about some teams that give up a lot of Corsi. We'll start there. And in terms of the defensive side of the puck, we always want to focus on longer samples. So for defensive numbers, I'm looking at the last 25 games or the season in comparison to their Corsi or their overall shot attempts against. And from the offensive perspective, a lot of things can change on offense quickly, whether it's a different power play combination. Some teams maybe just are getting hot at the right times offensively. They just find a lot of chemistry in their lines. And so I want to look at kind of the more recent trends, the last 10 games or so, in terms of offensive Corsi for and offensive high danger chances, that sort of thing. So just a quick walkthrough on high danger, low danger chances. High danger chances are just chances that happen in the areas of the ice where there's more likely to be goals. So obviously we want to focus on teams that shoot the puck a lot, but we don't want to have these perimeter teams that are racking up all these low danger chances from the outside that really don't have a lot of chance to go in. So sure, if you're trying to target a guy for floor, it's totally fine. But if we really want to find these ceiling games, find these teams that explode for 5 or 6 goals on a night, I like to skew towards offenses that are generating a lot of really high danger chances in good situations on the other side as well. So let's walk through it. And the first situation in terms of teams that give up a lot of volume, teams that defenses that give up a lot of Corsi, Ottawa's a team we've been targeting for most of the year. And I will say that they are kind of middle of the pack in terms of their low danger versus high danger allowed. But this 63.7 number in terms of their Corsi against, again, it's gotten even worse over the last 15 games or so, or the last 25 games. They're a team that we're targeting, guys. So Buffalo, it's a tough spot, right? It doesn't fit together completely seamlessly. Buffalo's not a great offensive team, so they're definitely not a team that's going to generate a ton of Corsi, though they have been improving a little bit lately. So this plus minus metric is basically the difference in the short term and the long term. So we want to focus on teams that are playing really well lately. Columbus, one of those teams that's really been playing better lately on the offensive side of the puck. So we'll get there. But I will say that Ottawa and Buffalo, this game is interesting just for a couple of reasons. Both of these teams are playing up in pace relative to how they have before. And Buffalo, even on the road, that's a pretty nice team total for a road team. A lot of it probably does have to do with this matchup against Ottawa, but it's an interesting one for sure. So if we wanted to kind of walk through some of our new stats here as well, and let's just talk about this. So power play time. So we're looking at Buffalo here. Power play time on ice per game. Only 3.84 minutes per game. It's below average. They don't draw a lot of penalties. This power play goals per minute, again, I might change this to something else, whether it's per 60, whether it's per 2 minutes, whatever it is. This was the easiest and quickest way I could get this in the data sheet for you guys today. So power play goals per minute is what we're going with. Slightly above average, so nothing too crazy there. So I do think that it's an interesting spot for Buffalo. I don't think they'll be heavily owned. I could be wrong on that based on just a lot of people are just going to blindly target Ottawa in that matchup. But let's go ahead and at least put Buffalo in our back pocket. Someone like Jack Eichel as a one-off play certainly makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not sure if I'm going to fully stack up that scenario. So let's walk through a little bit of these power play teams, and it's one of the new things that we added. So in terms of power play goals per minute over the last 10 games, Toronto, Pittsburgh, New Jersey, Ottawa on the other side of that game that we were just talking about. So let's talk about Pittsburgh first. So this is a situation that I think is really interesting from a tournament perspective. Toronto, again, for those of you guys that haven't been with us the entire NHL season, Toronto's a team that I target pretty heavily because they do generate a ton of high danger chances, which we know. They do generate a decent, or at least above average amount of Corsi, which is nice. We have some elite weapons like Austin Matthews that are just elite volume shooters and definitely provide a lot of upside and safety. So Toronto's one of my favorite teams to target. I will say they are on the road against this Pittsburgh team that's been playing really well. So let's piece through that. So they're an average team in terms of their time on ice per game on the penalty kill. So they take an average amount of penalties. They actually haven't allowed many power play goals against. So penalty kill goals against per minute, 0.9. So slightly below average. Let's just rely on the colors for some of this stuff for today. And I do think that it's not a great matchup on paper for Toronto, for sure, just because the Corsi matchup is relatively neutral. They do give up a slightly below average amount of high danger. So it's not that you can totally get away from Toronto. In fact, you might get them at lower ownership in this spot with a lower team total, but it is interesting. Let's look at the other side of the puck on this game, because I think this is a really interesting game that you're probably going to have to get right today. One of the things that I really like about Pittsburgh is that they don't generate a ton of low danger chances, middle of the pack in terms of their high danger, but I do think that that's at least something that we could take into consideration for a team that hasn't been providing a lot of volume over the last 10 days. But the volume that they have been providing has been relatively strong, mostly medium danger somewhere in the middle here, but not much low danger. And if we're just looking at their power play goals per minute, they're right at the top here, second best team in the entire league, or sorry, on the entire slate in terms of that. And they're actually generating a lot of power play time on ice as well. So if we could sort by that, Pittsburgh's actually top 5 in their time on ice per game on the power play over the last 10 games. So that's a data point that I actually like quite a bit. It's kind of crazy. Both these teams in this game are strong on the power play. I guess not crazy when you think about it. It's Toronto and Pittsburgh, but mostly a neutral matchup in terms of Toronto. People are targeting Toronto quite a bit just because they're thought of as this like run and gun, poor defensive team. But it's an interesting one that they've actually been a lot better on the power play this year overall, about middle of the pack over the last 25 games. Slightly above average. So it's going to be a situation where this, again, the pieces don't fit seamlessly. Both these teams pretty strong on the power play, but both have pretty good penalty kills. So that's an interesting one for sure. Let's see who is poor on the power play, at least over the last 25 games or so. So Carolina, Buffalo, New Jersey, some poor, Nashville, Ottawa, St. Louis. Those are the matchups that we'll be looking at here. So Nashville's a team that we would be targeting Carolina on the road. That's a little bit unfortunate. It's nice to see that Ottawa's not very strong on the penalty kill either. That could be another notch in favor of Buffalo and maybe stacking up parts of that game. So I think that's interesting. One of the things that I like about this sheet overall is it can lead us to some contrarian spots as well. I don't expect New Jersey to be popular today. They're on the road against the St. Louis team that there's just so much narrative involved of Vegas really like to slow down the pace. They don't give up a ton of goals. And some of that is true. Like this Corsi number right here, 53.4, it's below average for sure. But actually slightly above average amount of those chances are high danger chances and a slightly below average amount of low danger. So it's kind of an efficiency spot here. So the only time I would really target a team like St. Louis is with a team, quite honestly, like New Jersey that generates a lot of high danger chances. So if we're just looking at that over the last 10 games, New Jersey, second most high danger chances on the slate. And probably a lot of it has to do with how well they've been playing on the power play, believe it or not. Now, they don't have Blake Coleman anymore after that trade to Tampa Bay. So that's something that we should be talking about in terms of New Jersey. He's one of their best players for sure. But that number, 0.16 power play goals per minute, they're generating a lot of opportunities as well on the other side against a team that has been giving up a lot of penalty goals on the penalty kill. So I actually think that New Jersey, let's go ahead and put them as a stacking target if we really wanted to get off the board today. We'll start with that. Let's focus on a couple situations that Vegas really likes here. We talked about Pittsburgh. I certainly think that it's a fantastic spot for some individual weapons on Pittsburgh, an easy team to stack as well at home against Pittsburgh. So I think that Pittsburgh, let's go ahead and add them to the stack targets as well, because I do think that game is going to be relatively high paced, and we can focus on that. Nashville is an interesting one. Let's walk through Nashville. So they are at home, 3.8 implied goal total. They have been a team that hasn't been throwing as much volume at the net recently. So that's something that we should take into account here, that -4 number. But I will say that their chances overall are not great. They're getting a decent amount of power play opportunities, not doing much with them. But I will say that Carolina is a matchup that maybe we should be targeting right now. So this is a team that, again, is giving up a lot of high danger chances, 22.5%. What is that on the slate? So that's about... yeah, so that's the second highest on the slate there in terms of high danger chances on the season. And that's not really something that you think about with targeting Carolina either. But let's look ahead at, so we mentioned that they're just not a great team as far as targeting their penalty kill minutes. It's an interesting one here because Nashville, I always struggle with Nashville a little bit because they get so much production from different areas of their lineup, and it's not necessarily condensed onto one specific player, unless your name's Roman Josi, I guess. We're talking about from a fantasy perspective. But time on ice per game on the penalty kill, Carolina leads the slate by a significant margin, and it's basically middle of the pack in terms of their defense on the penalty kill as well. So I think that Nashville is an interesting stacking opportunity. Let's go ahead and add them to the list. I think that they're a team that I think people will be on today. But I think it's an interesting spot. I actually like the other side of this New Jersey game as well. There's a couple things that make me a little bit nervous. I think this will be the more popular side of this game for sure, mostly just because people know that New Jersey will give up shot attempts. The one thing that's been nice about New Jersey in targeting, we've played Blackwood a ton at goaltender, I feel like, recently, just because of this number right here. They give up a lot of Corsi against, barely any high danger. So that's something that I look for when trying to find goalies for tournaments that might have a save ceiling. And we saw that in the last game with Blackwood. Even though he gave up a few goals, I think he had like 40 saves or something ridiculous. So St. Louis is a team, middle of the pack offensively in terms of their volume. They are not generating many high danger scoring chances. So that's not great. But the good news is most of them are going to be medium danger because their low danger number is very low. So that's something that we could be focusing on today if we wanted to stack up parts of St. Louis. I think it's an interesting spot. I don't know how great the ceiling is, but Vegas seems to be on board with St. Louis. So let's go ahead and add them to the stacking targets. I think they're a reasonable target today for sure. What else? Let's focus on a couple teams that are playing really well offensively. That's something we haven't done in terms of the high danger yet. Unfortunately, I mentioned that it's a tough slate, guys. A lot of these teams are on the road, which is never a fantastic situation to target. Maybe we should check on a team that I don't think many people, or maybe they'll go a little bit over-owned, I should say. So Philadelphia, 3.5 implied total at home. They are generating a decent amount of high danger, like above average for sure. They're on the power play a lot. They haven't done much with it. Columbus is a team that they're not taking penalties, and when they do, they're elite on the penalty kill. defensively, they're another one of those teams that gives up a lot of shots and like no high danger. So I'm almost never targeting a team or a matchup, I should say, like Columbus. So I'm completely off of Philly today. I hope a lot of people go there. I would prefer to be on the side of maybe playing a goaltender from this game. That would be what I would be focusing on. Let's take a peek at Montreal, because Detroit is a team that we have been targeting on the matchup side of things for quite a while as well. We know they're not, they don't have a ton of talent. This is mostly green across the board, but not an elite matchup by any means. But on a tough slate like this, I don't think we can get too picky with that. I think that Montreal, even on the road, they're a team that we know they're going to provide volume. We do know that. Their low danger is a little bit high for me, and they haven't been great on the power play, but I could see grabbing a piece from Montreal if we can find one or two that are a little bit underpriced. So I think that'd be interesting just because of the spot overall against Detroit. So let's see some teams that, again, haven't been great on the penalty kill. Let's see if we can uncover anything a little bit more unique here. I was going to say maybe going down to something like Winnipeg, but again, LA is one of those teams, again, they don't give up a ton defensively, and Winnipeg has just been so perimeter. That's just one of those teams that I would say that has been frustrating for me personally. So 50.1% of their shots, their chances, I should say, have been low danger chances. That's something we kind of want to avoid. So this is a number that would be like, oh, great. They're generating a ton of Corsi, 63.1 Corsi over the last 10. That's fantastic. It's just not coming in the gray areas. This is one that we talk about the pieces coming together. This one pieces together as a fantastic fade, in my opinion. So this team that doesn't generate great chances against a team that doesn't allow a ton of those type of chances or a ton of volume overall. So that would be a tougher spot for me to really get behind. It's tough sledding, guys. So if anyone is watching this, we're definitely going to have to dig a little bit deeper on Twitch today. So make sure you come hang out with us for a bit over there. Let's see if we can grab another stacking target here. So we talked about some volume teams overall. What about, okay, so we didn't mention this side of the Columbus and Philly game. Columbus, I mentioned, they're one of those teams that people think of them as just this low volume team overall offensively. But hey, I mean, this is a big improvement over their last 10 games. They're throwing a lot more pucks on net, and actually it's not coming from the low danger areas. So that's interesting to me. Their power play hasn't been good. We know that. But Philly's been taking an above average amount of penalties at least. They're not giving up much Corsi, but the Corsi they do give up is slightly above average and higher danger. So I think that Columbus could be just another team. And today, I really want to focus on some contrarian stacks in this portion, because with these contests on DraftKings with all the money on top, I want to try and get us some unique teams that have a chance to go off. So I think that Columbus at really low ownership, I would have a little bit of interest to them today. And what about, let's talk about another contrarian team since we're kind of on that right now. LA, teams that throws a puck on net a lot. They're basically the poster offense, you should say, as the team that doesn't generate high value and high danger chances, but fantastic matchup for that. So maybe we see a little bit of a spike in efficiency for LA today, even though they're on the road. It is a great matchup. Winnipeg's a team, San Jose, like those type of teams we're targeting a lot because they give up volume and they give up really strong volume. Tough game environment and stacking section today, guys, but let's try and work through some of the positions and some of the guys that I'll be focused on, at least in my core for MME today. It is a big qualifier night today, so I'll be in the queue. I'm going to build about 47 teams today. I know most sports, if anyone's been with me through NFL, I like to kind of target some of those smaller fields and go up in stakes a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead, and I think it's such a tough slate overall. It actually might be a decent slate to run out multiple lineups, and I do think that some of the tournaments are a little bit bigger. So let's talk about the center position. Jack Eichel for Buffalo. I did mention that I like this team quite a bit today, a little bit more than I normally do. You got to pay a premium for Eichel. He's 8,300 on DraftKings, 8,200 on FanDuel, but 99th percentile time on ice. He's a guy that is going to be involved if Buffalo has a day today. 99th percentile in time on ice, like I mentioned, 98th in his shot prediction, 98th in his power play shot prediction. So again, over the last 15 days, he's a guy they're really trying to get the puck on the power play, which is not surprising. He's a cornerstone piece for this team and going forward, but also there's no way to have this team really do well, in my opinion, without him being a big part of it. 92nd percentile Corsi 4. We always want to touch on Corsi at the center position because it is probably the most predictive metric that I've found in my research. So 92nd percentile in the short term there. Buffalo, top 5 high danger chances for percentage over the last 10 games, like we mentioned. Playing a lot better. They're at Ottawa, highest Corsi allowed team on the slate over the last 25. Could be a nice volume spot for Eichel with some upside. Boone Jenner for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So if anyone has been following my content for the last couple of years about hockey, you'll know that I just have a love for Boone Jenner because he's not scared to shoot the puck. He's 4,600 on DraftKings, 4,200 on FanDuel. He was a guy that I was firing at when he was much cheaper, not even on the power play, I guess, because he could go out there and get 12 minutes of ice time and 5 shots. And with the shot bonus, the block bonus, now on the DraftKings scoring, it's just so valuable to get that guy that can threaten for the bonus every single game. I did mention that Columbus, I think, is a team that is on an uptrend offensively, not just defensively. So 99th percentile shots plus blocks. Boone Jenner's been a big part of that over the last 15 days. 87th percentile blocks. Having a center that it can get you the block bonus as well, or at least give you a little bit of a peripheral floor there, is something that we don't get at the winger position. So focusing on that at center is something that I like to do. Over the past month, he's right there, 87th percentile, 72nd percentile shot attempts over the last 15 days. I'm not really that worried about that number. Again, this is a guy that longer term is kind of a volume shooter anyway. I'm not too worried about 72nd percentile. I would imagine if I looked at that over the past year or so, it's much closer to the 80th, 85th percentile, maybe even higher. 70th percentile power play shots, that's what's important, right? He's going to be used on the power play, and that's something that we know there's going to be a lot more goals that come from that side. And I do think there's some one-off appeal if you don't want to stack up Columbus. Maybe it makes you a little bit nervous. I think that you can kind of one-off with Boone Jenner and feel pretty good about it. You're one-off, so basically the guys that you will have on the outside of some of your other main stacks, they really need to be able to hit value on their own. So someone we talk about a lot in that regard is someone like Mike Hoffman for the Florida Panthers. He doesn't correlate on even strength with some of their studs, but he's on their top power play unit, and he's the guy they're trying to get access to on the power play and that nice shot that he has. Columbus, again, I mentioned how much they've improved, 51.4 to 60.1 Corsi per game from the last 25 to the last 10 games. So the best plus minus on the slate in that regard. Let's talk about some wingers now. This is a tough position overall because they don't really block shots historically. So you don't really have to, I guess you don't have that floor to really go to in terms of the block bonus. But this is something that I would like to pay down if there was some elite kind of options up top, and this is a slate where we do have some elite options, but I want to touch on Brendan Gallagher first. He's Montreal, 6,800, 7,300 on FanDuel. I do think that it's an interesting one if you did want to pay up at the winger position today because of the volume that he does produce. 98th percentile shot prediction, 96th percentile Corsi 4 over the last 15 days, 90th in shots plus blocks, and it's Detroit. Top 5 team in Corsi allowed over the last 25 games and high danger percent on the season. So top 5 in both those regards. It is a strong matchup. Like I said, for Montreal today, they're one of those teams that are tough to get right because it is a little bit spread out there. But if you do hit on one of those guys, it is a really good spot for them. The concern would just be that Montreal's power play combinations have certainly been in flux lately. We talk about Colorado, some of these teams that really just focus on their first unit on their power play. And there's a lot of value in that. And Montreal is one of those teams that they haven't quite figured it out on the power play recently, and they don't have a lot of really combinations that we'll see frequently. They're kind of messing around with some things right now. So that's a concern for sure, paying that price point for Gallagher. Brady Tkachuk. I love Brady Tkachuk. 6,100 on DraftKings, 6,300 on FanDuel. 99th percentile shots plus blocks over the 15 days. 98th percentile shot prediction. And what I really like about this, he's just, I mean, obviously you're going to get the peripherals, 97 the shot attempt, 88th percentile Corsi 4. That's a great number for a guy that I don't think will be super owned for Ottawa. Never is, right? Their total is never super high. But talking about a guy that really, we talked about Eichel being a big part of Buffalo's offense. Tkachuk is just such a big part of this offense too. So I do think it's a contrarian option at Buffalo, who again just doesn't give up a lot defensively. Second lowest Corsi allowed over the last 25 games. But Ottawa's a top 5 team in Corsi 4 over the last 10 and high danger chances over the last 10. So I actually think Ottawa is a little bit sneaky today in some large field tournament stuff. On defense, so this is typically where I'm going to be paying up for guys like Roman Josis, guys that just can give me those elite peripheral performances, but actually provide me with some upside on the offensive side as well. So the guy that kind of stands out to me today in that regard is Kris Letang for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So 6,800 on DraftKings, 7K on FanDuel, 99th percentile shots plus blocks. He is in the 99th percentile time on ice as well. I mentioned Corsi at the center position, but time on ice historically is one of the best, or at least most predictive stats for defense on DraftKings and FanDuel. So I'm interested in a guy that's going to be out there a ton. Obviously, he's going to be quarterbacking that power play unit with some of the best players in the entire world. 96th percentile shot prediction, 94th percentile power play shots over the last 15 days. So we talked about how well this Pittsburgh power play has been playing lately, in particular since they got Sidney Crosby back. Over the last 15 days, Letang is one that actually is getting a lot of those shot opportunities on the man advantage. So I think getting access to some of those studs like Crosby, like Malkin with Letang is an interesting route to go today in roster construction. Pittsburgh, 24.6% power play, 5th best in the NHL. Highest implied team total on the slate. Again, they're playing against Toronto at home. So I think that Pittsburgh is going to be pretty chalky, but I wouldn't be, I guess, opposed to having some Letang shares as one-offs. Stacking up Pittsburgh, like we mentioned, I think is certainly in play. Colton Parayko for St. Louis, another favorite of the community, 5,300 on DraftKings, 4,700 on FanDuel. That's, I guess, the biggest concern is his price has definitely gone up since we got on him. And I will say the peripherals are at least reasonable, but they're not elite as they were probably even a month ago or so. 89th percentile power play shots. So we like that. There's some upside there. Obviously, Jay Bouwmeester is not in the lineup anymore for St. Louis. 85th percentile shots plus blocks over the last 15 days. And 80th percentile time on ice over that time period. So maybe he's a guy that sees a little bit of a boost with this decor that obviously is in flux a little bit right now. St. Louis, second highest implied team total on the slate against New Jersey. Versus New Jersey, again, second most Corsi against over the last 25. So targeting some of these defensemen in good situations from a Vegas perspective, but also going to give us access to some of these studs, access to some really nice peripherals is something that I think would make sense kind of in the mid-range to make sure you have some shares of these guys. Goalie's a tough position overall. I've never sugar-coated that aspect of it. I guess really getting the win is so important, but also you need these guys to get to the top of GPPs. So let's talk about Carey Price for Montreal. He is 7,900 on DraftKings. He's 8,700 on FanDuel. And I'll mention this as well. I like to mention this every time. Make sure that you check if your goaltender is a starter. This, like at the time of this video, we don't have all the starters announced yet. So make sure you get the right guy in. I will say in terms of Carey Price, 90th percentile Vegas moneyline rating, 4th lowest percent of high danger chances against on the season. So Montreal gives a lot from the outside, which is definitely what you want to target from a goaltending perspective. They're at Detroit, 6th lowest percent of high danger chances for over the last 10. So Detroit's a team that just doesn't have a ton of talent. Really getting that win, I think, would be a strong start to your lineups today with Carey Price. Tristan Jarry for Pittsburgh. We mentioned the Pittsburgh side of things from a stack perspective, but I also like Jarry, 7,800 on DK. He's 8,900 on FanDuel. I don't know if a lot of people are going to go there against Toronto just because they're thought of such as an elite offensive team, but 95th percentile team wins over the last month, 7-2-1 over the last 10 games, Pittsburgh. So that's what I really want to target at goaltender as well, is just these teams that are playing really well lately. That's something that is more predictive than almost anything in terms of just really targeting teams that are targeting goaltenders that have a better chance for the win. Team implied goal total, 3.5 is kind of that threshold, and we don't have a lot of those options today. So it makes sense if you think a team's going to score a lot of goals, better chance that they could be in a situation to get the win and help your goaltender get there. 3rd highest save prediction on the slate. So I do think that against Toronto, it's a little bit scary, but there should be some volume coming his way. And if he can have a decent outing in terms of saves, that just really adds to his ceiling overall. Pittsburgh, 3rd lowest percent high danger chances against on the season. That's definitely something we want to focus on when picking our goaltender. So Tristan Jarry might be my favorite option on the slate. Both of these guys I think are very strong. If you want to learn even more about how to be a profitable DraftKings player, start now by hitting the subscribe icon in the bottom right-hand corner. And if you are new to the NHL streets, what I would really advise that you do is jump into our Discord chat. It's definitely a lot of hockey minds. Our community is really getting bigger every single day. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we are probably live on Twitch by this point, 1 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to continue to break down this slate. So be sure and check out that link in the description. 1 p.m. Eastern time. If you're watching it around then, come hang out with us, ask some questions, and we're going to help break down this slate together.